Life Happens is the podcast brought to you by 87%, the innovative digital platform that is empowering businesses and individuals to build mental fitness and make positive changes in their everyday lives. Hi everyone, I'm James Gwinnett, endurance athlete and the marketing director of 87%. And in this series, I have the highly enviable job of speaking to inspirational people from the worlds of adventure, business, intelligence, the military, sports, and more, to get their take on life's ups and downs, the setbacks that they've overcome, and how they've dealt with failure to get to be at the pinnacle of their sectors, all with the aim of helping you build positive mental health. Now, this week, my guest truly amazes me with how much she is able to pack in. She's a serial entrepreneur, most recently founding the wellbeing benefits disruptor pirkx, pirkx, which we'll come on to. She also holds a series of advisory roles, doing incredible work in the fields of human rights, education, and more. She's made a name for herself in innovation across the business world and has held a series of high-powered, high-profile positions in investment, and initially actually on the trading floor where she cut her teeth professionally. So much experience to talk to. I hope we have enough time. Welcome to Life Happens, Stella Smith.
Thank you so much, James. I'm really excited to be here.
It's fantastic to have you. Now, we are a mental health platform, as you know, 87%. So first and foremost, it's important to ask, how are you?
I'm brilliant this morning. So I'm having a fabulous day. Firstly, because it's Friday, which means I get my lazy bath and to play with my child over the weekend. But secondly, because I've got a big release coming up in pirkx, and we've spent 5 months working quite long hours and trying to overcome quite a lot of obstacles to get there. So it's all on the pad for next week. So we're all feeling a little bit proud of ourselves this morning, and ready for the chaos that will come next week. So yeah, Friday calm before next week's storm, I would imagine.
Wonderful. I love that you include the personal element there of obviously having the time to play with your daughter, but the importance of the milestone that you're hitting sort of professionally in the coming days. But let's dial the clock back. We were chatting in the build up to this. You told me some wonderful stories about your dad, and I wanted to pick up on that if that's okay. You sort of had you taking on various sporting challenges. You were telling me about hitting pennies and throwing tennis balls, and I'd love you to tell me about that, your early years and your upbringing with your father, if you could.
Yeah, of course. My dad is incredibly sporty, so I like sport, but I'm not quite as disciplined or as active as my dad is. But he used to play great games with us as a kid, and I'm sure some of these lessons they could sound a bit like child abuse, I suppose, but on a positive note, no, I think he really got me and my brother ready for life in terms of so he'd do silly things, which is what I think you're going to in when we were chatting earlier in the week is he had like a weight belt, the boxing weight belts, and he'd make my brother and I stand with our backs to the wall, and then we'd have to put our arms out, and then he would put the weight belt on our arms, and the first kid that dropped it obviously was the loser, and the one that managed to carry it was the winner. But he had names for us, and my name for my dad was Stella the Great as a kid, so he'd kind of introduced me from the boxing corner, and at the time I think it was wrestling. Big Daddy used to be on the television, and yeah, so he'd do that. He would make us practice throwing tennis balls. I'm not particularly good at throwing. It's one thing I'm not particularly good at, but he would put a rake and put sort of bricks either side and make us practice to hit the ball against the rake from a very long distance across the garden. Or on ping pong, he's the coolest guy in the world basically, and he would come up with lots of things to test me and my brother, and of course he's so sort of strong and capable and smart that and some dads, they let their kids win. Didn't happen in my world. When it came to a pool table, he would say double or quit. I think at one point I was in debt to him for the thousands. So yeah, that's the story of my dad. Is lots of fun games to make me more resilient, I suppose, now that I've come into the sphere of learning about 87% and mental health a bit more.
Did that instill in you an ethos of motivation, of determination, and perhaps a slight competitive edge that has got you to where you are today?
Yeah, maybe, maybe. I certainly think both my parents, my mum and my dad. My mum is the loveliest person in the world, and she's also very bright, very creative. She would say that all my good stuff comes from her, because I think that's what she'd say. But in terms of my mum and dad, despite them sort of separating when I was 11, yeah, prior to that and post that, they've been amazing. They've always told me that I don't think there's anything I can't do in this world. So even though it is completely, it's probably not even true, but in my head it's true. If I wanted to be an astronaut, I still think I could be. And my mum and dad always said, if you want to do anything, and you work hard and your mission. So to the extent, I mean, they drilled it into me to the extent that if I wanted to be a 100-meter runner, I think that's possible. I do know that it'd take me 40 years and I wouldn't get to the very top, but I could do a good job if I spent 40 years and that was my only aim and my only goal. And that's a thing I hope I pass on to my child, because do I know if it shaped me? How do any of us know exactly what shaped us to be who we are? Surely it's a sum of all our experiences. But yeah, I can't believe that those holding of the weight belts and that kind of grit and determination that my little brother Hayden was not going to beat me. It must have instilled something in me.
And you mentioned your age 11. You had some bad family news. Talk me through what happened and your memories of it, and how perhaps it affected you emotionally at the time.
I mean, look, I think it's a common occurrence for many people. It's not many people you speak to where in their childhoods they didn't have some sort of moment where it wasn't pleasant, or it wasn't a nice time. My mum unfortunately got diagnosed with breast cancer, but I'm very lucky she's still here. And then after that, my parents separated. So my brother and I stayed with my dad, and my mum moved down the road. But of course, as an 11-year-old, that's to sort of almost lose your mum and then have your family home disrupted is quite a lot to handle, I suppose.
And so over the next 5 years or so, you were still close to your dad, weren't you? But you made the decision age 16, I believe, to move.
Yeah, 16 and a half, 17. Yeah.
How did that come about?
I got my first job and I earned some money. Yeah, I think you kind of, I don't know. I think I've always had in my head that you're here to, it's my job to put food on my table and water in my mouth and a roof over my head. It's not anybody else's job. And so I think as soon as I got the money, I went off to seek my fortune. And I actually rented a house in a place called Worcester Park. It had no central heating, but I was the coolest kid in town because, of course, I didn't go on to do I did A levels and I flunked. I basically was really naughty after my parents. I was bright, but incredibly naughty. And but what I did have was a 3-bedroom house in Worcester Park with no central heating, to the point where the washing up bowl would freeze over. So you'd have to break it was in like this kind of like it was in an extension, and it was so. I remember getting dressed for work when I first went to work in a bank underneath the duvet. But of course, I was the coolest kid in town. I mean, who at 16, 17, where I grew up, has a 3-bedroom house where they can have their friends around and they can drink beer. I mean, there's a big positive to it.
But I love the fact there was obviously a level of focus for you at the age of 16. I mean, at the age of 16, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I probably still don't. But there you are, you're going out, you're getting a job. When did it hit you, or how did it hit you that you had a knack for business?
So, I think I was born with a brain for it, but probably didn't realise at 16 or 17. I think you just get up and do what you've got to do, which is earn some money to pay for your food and way in life. But I remember as a kid, I'd watched something on Blue Peter, so I should have known. I mean, my mum and dad, maybe they do if we ask them. I watched something on Blue Peter where this kid had bought an annual. In the olden days, they had things called comic book annuals, and it was worth a load of money. So I remember making my mum and dad take me to car boot sales to go and find annuals and comics. And I mean, I was probably only 6 or 7. I wasn't very old, but still in my dad's loft now. Not only did I go and buy them, I then catalogued them, wrapped each of them in plastic, and made a library note of what they were and what edition. They're probably worth a fortune, and they're still thinking, because they're all like specially wrapped. But I think I think my brain, whether that's my dad playing games with me or the combination of my mum and dad's up, whatever it was, I think I was just born with it. There's a, I think, I don't know, is the honest answer.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, we sort of, I mean, you've obviously come down an incredible path since then, but there was obviously something sort of innate there that was pushing you in that direction. And your first proper job, for want of a better word of phrase, was on the trading floor. Is that right?
It wasn't quite. It took me a little while to get my first proper job. Was McDonald's, and I worked full time in McDonald's. I was a party host, but even then I did really well. I got my wage up to like 6 times the other people in McDonald's by doing parties for the kids in the local branch. But by the time that was my first sort of real serious job. But I'd worked in a private bank and then moved across to the treasury, which I guess then moved me into a bigger train. That the first time I got scared, I suppose, that, or not scared, but, I just thought, wow, I'm here, was probably going on to, I moved across to work for Lloyds and went onto the financial market side. So trading floor, you have, everyone's got sort of 6 to somewhere between 3 and 9 screens. You've got, at the time, you'd have little clickers and things. It's noisy, not quite the days of open outcry, that you see on some of the old movies, but it was fairly full on. And I think I said to you earlier in the week, I was inspired by, I didn't know what I was doing. So I went to a charity shop and bought some posh clothes, and I wore braces and a shirt, and I pretended to be Gordon Gekko on day one. And I thought, if I just keep this sort of solid exterior, and it worked. So, I was still there. I was successful for the bank, and here I still am. So it didn't go too badly.
Questionable role model, Gordon Gekko, but still.
And look, I think, as I said, it wasn't kind of the real olden days of that, but it's still a very noisy, very excitable place. I think the endorphins you get the hit from when you're into sport, or certainly that I see others getting. I think there's a buzz about being in that noise and excitement and things moving at pace. If you're a foreign exchange trader, your price is moving like this, and sometimes you may make no decisions at all and read the newspaper, but other times you need to make very quick decisions for very significant amounts of money at a very fast speed. And in the olden days, it wasn't as computerized, I suppose, as it is now. So your brain needed to, and I enjoy that. So, there's still a part of me that when I'm a grown up, which I don't think I quite am yet, I'd like to build my own trading floor in my room, just to pretend to do it again. It was that much fun,
Get the pinstripe suit back out and the braces.
Yeah, and the braces. I mean, what an idiot.
Walk around with the Financial Times underneath you, folded up underneath you.
It worked. But yeah, I loved it. And look, some of the people that still work with me in Pirkx today, I mean, Craig worked for me. He was in my team at HBOS. And, there was a real camaraderie and a sense of team. And I think in that busy environment, and sort of people, if they lost their tempers, it would be quick and short and sharp, but there would be no aftermath. And that's something that I really like. I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but I think that if you can speak your mind and be very direct, then it helps with a team culture, because it has to be open because it's so fast. And then it can kind of be shouting and screaming 1 minute, and then the next minute you're both working on a client account and getting something done. And that, for me, I took the positive from that. Yeah,
sure. Let's come on to teamwork. What I do want to focus on is that image of you, pinstripe suit, braces, on the trading floor, a woman in a highly, highly male-orientated industry, which for some might be incredibly intimidating, but you saw it as an advantage. It sort of worked in your favour when we were discussing this beforehand.
Yeah. And look, at Lloyds and HBOS, there were other women there, but there were certain moments when you realise where it's male dominant. So one of the first things I did when I moved into the treasury team is they took me out on a do, and in those days corporate hospitality was not frowned upon as much as it is now. So I think I went out for one of my very first mornings. I went to a industry lunch. there was business purpose in it, building relationships and everything else. But it started off at Smithfield's Market at sort of 4 o'clock in the morning, and a pint of Guinness being put in front of me. I then walked into this do, and there was sort of 600 odd people. Nick, the chap who broke Barron's Bank, was speaking, and as I looked up, I realised I was the single and only female in about 600 men in the room. But I held mine, and the reason I think it's an advantage is anything that makes you stick out or be memorable. If you want to make a splash, well, you can say, and for some that will be a problem and an issue, which of course I understand and empathise with. But for me personally, it just meant that I was memorable. So, in a sea of suits, it's far easier to stand out with a mop of blonde hair and a female with stupid red braces, a white shirt and a pinstripe suit. So, I think it's an advantage, or I found it to be an advantage for me, but I can certainly understand that for others, I think maybe I was just so young, I didn't think about it, James.
But it is potentially a nice piece of advice for anyone that is faced with that situation that might be perhaps slightly introverted. I don't know, imposter syndrome might be an issue. That actually, if you're able to make yourself stand out for positive reasons, of course, that can help further your position. Definitely.
And look, as my mum and dad said to me, I believe everyone can do anything, right? There's obviously, we may have some of our abilities limited, which we can't do anything with, but the majority of things we can, if you really, really, really try hard, and that is the single most important thing to you. My mum and dad made me believe that it's possible to do it. So no, I don't even think I sort of stopped to think about being an imposter. I just pretended to be Gordon Gekko and copy what the next person's doing and then try and do it a bit better. And I also had a load of role models. So there was an amazing lady called Bridget Townray that I worked with at a small private bank called Hoare & Co. And for me, she was my idol. I watched her walk into a room or command a room or just be so on point in terms of the way she executed business. So I copied her, and then eventually, if you copy enough people, then you kind of find your own. Or I found my own space within that. So I don't think imposter syndrome was a thing that was talked about back then. So and I don't think I felt it, or if I did, then I only thought about it in terms of, well, how can I change that? How can I not be an imposter and be better than the next person at my job?
But it's a fascinating insight, because it comes down to our perceived failures as people. If we perceive it, and I love your positive message, and it's an old corny maybe adage that if you put your mind to it, you can achieve. But it's so true. If you sit there in an office environment as the only lady and think, oh God, this is horrible, I can't do this, you're not going to be able to. Whereas if you look at that perceived failure and think, well, how can I change that, and what can I do to get past that thought process, then the world is there for the taking, as it were.
Yeah. And look, and you see it with even with my little one. She's 3, and I'm probably the most paranoid, terrible mum. She goes up on a big climbing frame. I'm like, no, you need to wear a helmet. She doesn't want to wear a helmet because it doesn't look cool even at 3. And I'm sort of don't do it. But if you say to her, she's quite sweet. She walks around, and her name is Darling, and she says, "Come on, darling, you can do it, darling. Come on." And my favourite. So obviously, I'm passing it down a generation, because my favourite game is, we've got this sort of double bed that's you can lift up. It keeps stuff on. I live in Covent Garden, so you don't get much space, so you can keep sheets and things underneath it. So what I do is I put her on the bottom of it, and then I lift it up, and then she has to climb up this what looks like a mountain to a 3-year-old, and I'm like, come on, darling, you can do it, come on. And now she says it to herself, and you can see kids seem to become more brave if you give them that kind of or I don't know, maybe it's just my child, I'm not sure, but I'm not a perfect parent, but you can definitely see that if you go, then what she does is adopt it's really high up, mama, I don't want to do this. Whereas if you say, come on, darling, you can do anything, you're capable of anything, she's like, I can do this, I'm brave, and you can see in a child the difference between the two. So maybe I do owe a lot more to my dad, and I should be sending him something special on Father's Day more than usual in June.
I was going to say, it sounds like you're turning
Yeah,
into, you're going to be getting your daughter to hold weights with her arms out.
Yeah, but I don't, I mean, I don't know if you're allowed to do that to children anymore, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's good, and I enjoyed it as a child. Being challenged or making things. My dad was very creative, so he would, we would make stuff or do stuff or at weekends. And my mum, I mean, she'd make me like cardboard houses. I don't think they really had much money when I was a kid, so they'd go to a big old freezer shop and build me like castles. My mum would paint them, and they stuck wrapping paper up on the wall so that I had nice bright stuff. So I think they're both very creative.
Amazing. So moving through your career, you've obviously held some very senior roles in a number of very high profile businesses. What drives you?
Yeah, interesting question. I don't think I like getting things wrong. I think I've got to want to do things right. I mean, right and wrong is a real subjective thing anyway, and it's personal. But what drives me now is clearly my daughter. I'd always listened to parents saying that, and now I feel that, and it's a really different thing. Before I'd been driven by my partners or my family or my friends, or just the want to succeed or do well. But I can see now that everything I get up and do in the morning really has to be focused about her life onward, for me. But I don't know. I think it's just my brain that I don't think I can switch my brain off doing what my brain does. And I don't know if that's the same for other people or not. But for me, I mean, it's quite irritating sometimes. I mean, I think fundamentally I'm lazy and a procrastinator. Yet when someone says to me, I've got this idea, or could you just help a bit with this? I can't help myself, and I'm like, oh, well, you could solve it this way, or you could solve it that way. And yeah, so I genuinely think I was just born that way, or now I've had this session with you, James, maybe it was my dad's fault.
I'm not a therapist, but
yeah. I'm feeling like a therapy session.
Yeah. Let's come on to your brain, because we, again, in the build up to this, we were talking, and you sort of confessed to the fact that you're a workaholic. Now, I have a theory that we're all addicted to something. I mean, for me, it's fitness. I do far too much of it, probably, than is healthy. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So I'm not saying that your commitment to your work is a bad thing at all. But I'd love your take on where you sit on the scale of whether it's healthy, and your approach to sort of taking lots on, because you do so much, and we'll come on to more of the projects that you're involved with shortly.
Is addiction healthy or not? Well, that's a big question. What's your answer?
My answer is that addiction can be healthy if it's focused in the right way, and it depends obviously what you're addicted to. Now, alcohol, porn, food, junk food are all bad things, but I like to think of fitness as a less unhealthy vice than others. And if the work that you're doing is doing good for people, which pirkx is, and we'll come on to that, then I don't see that committing to it is a bad thing at all.
No, I think question, because you don't really want to be addicted to anything as an individual, do you? Because what you'd always like to do, so I guess, if I don't know what the dictionary definition of addiction is, but from my perspective, it's almost like you don't have the control or choice whether to do it or not. And I think you can love something and do it repeatedly and often, but there's a line between that and addiction, isn't there? And addiction means you're not in control, and I guess I quite like control. So it doesn't mean I don't have addictions, and that's I'm definitely addicted to Cadbury's cream egg. If you put a box of 48 Cadbury's cream eggs, and this has happened to me, I've eaten the whole lot in a week, and I mean, that's just poor show. I know, and they only come out once a year, but no, I think that for me, the things I do with work are mainly positive, but there are times where you're like, well, I'd rather sit on a beach for 5 minutes, or, be lazy and watch something on the I don't have a telly. I took away my telly in 2010. And it sounds very pious, but it's not pious. I still have 3 iPads in the house and an iMac and everything else, but it does stop me watching NAF TV. And my theory for that is I calculated the average number of hours I would spend in my life watching television. Like I said, I'm a nerd, and numbers are kind of at my heart. But if you just calculate even 5 hours a week, which is not much for most people, then you times that by 52. And then you times that hopefully by the average age of 84. I've got a calculator. I'm so tempted because I'm a numbers person to pick it up and calculate. What you end up is it's like weeks and months. It's not, you've spent a week watching TV. It's you've spent a big proportion of your life where you could have been, and I love TV. I love films. I love documentaries. I like quite boring television. But what are the other things that you missed out on by just sitting indoors and watching TV? And so for me, I consciously only sort of watch a small amount of stuff. And I think that helps, because if I'd be addicted to TV. I like all the NAF TV, in fact I won't say out loud because that's awful if we're doing a podcast, but the stuff that has entertainment shows, that has people sort of trying to be the next best singer and stuff. I mean, that would be my junk hit. So yeah, I think that doing the thing you do, as long as you're happy in it, and as long as you're enjoying it, and as long as it's not hurting others, not even that it has to do good for others, but it's not hurting or negative to anyone else, then for me, then it's a positive thing.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. The positivity and it not being harmful to yourself and others in terms of addiction. And we all need a means of de-stressing. For some people that is television. For some people that's an hour, I'll have a couple of pieces of chocolate, not the entire.
The worst thing is though, James, as you're speaking, I'm ticking all of them: the chocolate, the television.
But in everything in moderation is
absolutely
is what is, that's the saying, isn't it? And it's so true. And an hour in the evening of watching your favorite television show and having a couple of, as I say, a couple of pieces of chocolate to unwind is absolutely fine, as long as it doesn't start taking over your life and becoming harmful. But I mean, if you've taken television out of the flat, how do you de-stress?
Really only one thing. I have a hot bath, so I'm a bit of a fan of bath and posh bubble bath and stuff. In fact, I wouldn't even say how much it costs because my dad would shoot me. But I like it's my thinking time. So with my diary's very busy, so for me, the one time I kind of have my quiet time, and my daughter's being looked after by somebody else, I can go and spend I can have 2 or 3 hours in a bath and just keep talking. I've got the most amazing bath behind what you see behind me, that's kind of a big white stone bath, and put all the candles on and some really posh bubble bath, and that's me. That's my fix. So I like doing projects for relaxation, and I like my mind, or drawing on things, or making things still.
So I mean, it's so important to have that release. As you know, for me, it's running, and I love your thinking in the bath analogy, because I think on my runs, I problem solve. I have a firm belief that if a problem can't be solved on a half-hour, 45-minute run, then it can't be solved at all, and you can just put it to one side. So I love that you're in the bath, and whilst
James, your one. It sounds far more physically impactful than my one, but mentally, I suppose it probably puts us both in the same place, but doing two very different things.
But mentally, arguably more important. It's important to be.
I don't know. I would quite like to be able to run the which is the one you're doing in a few weeks.
I'm planning to run the Cotswolds Way. But,
right. I mean, I would quite like to do that. So maybe you can serve as my inspiration.
You can.
Yeah, I can. No, I can. It's just finding the time to do it. And that's it, isn't it? There's so much in life we can go after. It's what do you prioritize first? And I guess I don't disagree with TV. I just want to prioritize other things. And I don't think you can do everything you want to do in life because there's so much out there. So, prioritization and getting it right is important.
Sure. Let's come on to sort of some of your side projects. Can I call them those? Because you've obviously, the work that you've done, but you've also had a lot of people sort of come to you for advice and strategy over the years. why do you think people come to you? What is it that you could offer people that makes you this, source of help for them?
Hopefully it's because in whatever problem they have, I have some kind of knowledge or connection that I can help. And I don't think you really know, or you don't tend to stop to assess why someone comes to you. I think that I try to make the diary time, no matter who it is or what it is, to help where I can. And if I can't, then try and connect them to somebody that can. So I guess there's a willingness to want to try and help. I can't in all circumstances. I may be no good, but my brain thinks quite quickly. So, and I'm quite good at problem solving, and I enjoy doing it. So I guess it sounds selfless, but I'd imagine it's a bit more selfish, which is I can't help it, and you've got a cool problem, can I help solve it? And that makes me feel good. So that would be my answer to that one.
You can't help it, and you are problem solving the world of well-being benefits at the moment. Tell us about pirkx and the work that you're doing with the platform there.
So look, pirkx was just a silly idea in my head in 2018, and basically I had a number of, and I still have a number of other things in my life where I've helped friends or family, and it's ended up being little businesses, because that's the thing I'm good at. I guess I'm a commercial animal that likes solving problems commercially and building things. And basically, to cut a long story short, I tried to find some benefits for a set of massage therapists, but they were all self-employed and I couldn't source them. So I built pirkx as just a little bit of kit, and it aggregates together well-being products and services, including 87% for mental health resilience. And it's interesting, pirkx. It's had other people keep calling it a meteoric rise, and it's not something we say ourselves. But it's a really interesting story. It's a serendipitous tale, and it's so positive, and the momentum, and all pirkx does is it's a piece of technology that gathers together all those well-being benefits and services and then delivers them to anybody. So we basically have things like 24/7 access to a doctor, a counsellor, amazing things like 87% around mental health resilience building. So my head, the first thing I had to do was solve what is well-being, and it's the dictionary definition is the state of being happy, healthy, or comfortable. And that still didn't mean much to me, as we spoke about earlier in the week. Those Cadbury scheme eggs keep featuring, and not necessarily enough gym time. So who am I to solve well-being for anybody? But what I do know is it means lots of different things to lots of different people. So what we put together was essentially a menu so that we can try and find something for everyone, and we cut it down into some channels. So mental health, physical health, mental health, financial well-being, social interaction, reward and recognition, the motivation or the pat on the head. I think my dad was more the kick up the backside, or testing. But yeah, so we broke it down, and look, the story of pirkx has been phenomenal, and it's cool. All of that stuff we deliver for £3.75 plus VAT per person per month. So what we've basically done is use technology to democratize access to those kind of services for everybody, rather than just those employed in a large corporation. So yeah, I definitely recommend anyone that wants to have a look at it to get in touch with me and the team. It's very cool.
Highly recommend it myself as well. We are, as a platform, 87% delighted to be partnering with you. You mentioned that we're involved, and I love your point about well-being being personalized, because that's, as you know, that's what the entire point of 87% is, giving individual people the ability to measure their own personal mental well-being. What have you benefited? How have you benefited from using the app?
So the big thing, as I said, I didn't know anything about well-being. So the first thing was I kind of got it into channels and thought, I'm quite clever here. I've got something, and there's a little menu for everyone. But then I started to break down those channels. Mental health, I got to the kind of stages where you really want resilience building, i.e., try not to have the problem in the first place at all. If you can build resilience to it, then diagnosis, then fix. And the cool thing, well, the first thing is normally I have very little, I get into something and then I'll forget about it. Well, I still have, my last email from 87% was this morning. So, I don't click on all of them, I'll be honest, but I click on some, and they're just like a little pick me up. And actually it's quite fun, because it asks you questions. So from my perspective, it asks you questions, which is fun, and then it gives you something to think about. So in those 3 hours of bath, there'll just be a little something. It's actually, for me, it gives you scores and things, and I seem reasonably well rounded. There's some gaps and there's some bits I can work on. But in those bath moments, it just, not every bath time, but for me, it's probably about once every 2 months. There's something I've read that stayed here, and then I take it to bath and I think about the position that I'm in. So if it says, oh, by the way, your self worth or whatever, it looks at many different facets of you, doesn't it? And of course that's your job, not mine. But for mine, it's, if I can see that shot down, you're like, oh really, I didn't think that. So and you start to actually think about it and analyze it, and there's lots of resource there. So yeah, for me, it's the bit that made me fall in love with Andy and the 87% team was the story that sits behind it, and the fact that it's about resilience building, the fact that it's about trying to keep yourself in a mental health, to be conscious of your mental health state and then to work on it.
We talked about mental fitness as part of everyday life as much as physical fitness part of everyday life, as being there. You wouldn't want to run the sort of physical fitness equivalent analogy is that you wouldn't want to turn up to run a marathon having not trained, and a marathon is the mental health equivalent of a problem. Someone in the family is taken ill, or financial worries, or whatever it might be, and you need that mental fitness in order to tackle those situations. Let's talk about failure. I'm putting you on the spot here, but what is your biggest failure? What has been your biggest failure, and how did you overcome it?
I don't really feel like I have failed, but of course I failed in multitude things. But I think my silly brain decides that wherever I've failed at, I'll just ignore that and move on and make it positive. So I'm divorced. I'm separated and divorced. So my marriage failed. I guess that's probably my big one, is that didn't work out. So I'm sad about that. How did I remedy it? I'm quite happy now. I've moved on and we're still friends. That takes time to be able to move through that kind of separation, especially when you have children. So I guess you call it, that's the technical term, it's a marriage failure. So I guess that's my biggest. I don't think I failed in other things, but I would imagine that's the fact that I've shaped my brain to just say it's not a failure, and this is what I've learned from it, and then I've tried to find the best, and I'm still really happy where I'm sitting. Of course there's days I get up where I feel fed up, or I don't want to work as hard, or I want to just get in that bath right now. But most days I'm not there. Most days I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, I can change this if I don't like it. The thing is every time I've taken myself there, or I'm sitting there and I'm having my, I'm guessing who doesn't sob in the bath, I don't know, but occasionally I might have this, emotional meltdown and cry in the bath, or whatever I have done historically. But I've always found that I end up happy again anyway in the end. So then I kind of, maybe it's that efficiency thing of being commercial. I'm like, well, what was the point in that? And I've done it 6 times in a row now, and I always end up happy and positive and in a better place in the end. So why bother doing that bit, or try and limit that to sort of this much rather than that much? And that doesn't work for everybody, but that works for me. So yeah, I think that's probably, there's been multitudes of failures. I've failed at little things in terms of work, not getting something quite right, or I failed at cutting the umbilical cord for my daughter. I closed my eyes and turned the other way and did that and missed, and they had to say I didn't want to do it, and then I was under pressure at the moment where it came, and so I thought, oh, they're asking me, and I didn't want to look like an idiot and not do it, so I kind of turned, because I'm squeamish, I turned my eye and cut. Yeah, so I definitely failed at that one.
That's not an answer I was expecting, but thank you for sharing.
Sorry.
I love your perspective on, positivity, mental fitness, resilience is not a case of just always looking on the bright side.
No,
it's accepting, which you seem to do. It's accepting that we will face tough situations, decisions as well, but situations. But actually, what's the point of dwelling, for want of a better word? Let's look at how we can get through it. Let's move on, and then we will end up feeling happier once it's been resolved.
Someone said to me the other week, you can only control your activity and your attitude. You can't actually control everything that's going on. Sometimes we fail not because of our own actions, but because of other people's actions or things around us happening. So no, I accept that I'll fail many more times, or in hopefully my very long life. But you know, I just can't see that it's helpful for me to think about that too much. Why not think about all the positive things, but not at the point of not processing them. You know, I still think having a cry in the bath for me is healthy, you know. And do you know what I do? I watch Long Lost Family, because Davina McCall's in it, and it's about families, and I just sob the whole way through. So if ever I need to get that emotional stuff out, I just watch a thing on the iPad of Long Lost Family, and that kind of gets all my emotional stuff out, because I just sob for the whole time. And yeah, I quite often get asked, well, why do you watch it by, you know, the household? And I'm like, actually, I quite enjoy it. I mean, maybe it's an emotional release. Who knows? So there's my dosage fix, is watch an episode of Long Lost Family.
It's a guilty pleasure. I want to focus on one more thing before we move on to the questions that I ask every guest, and that's you work in human rights as well. I mean, you're doing wellbeing, you're doing human rights, you're practically a saint. Let's what's the work that you do within the human rights?
Again, it was serendipity that made me cross paths with Kerry Kennedy and the Kennedy family, and the work of Robert F. Kennedy. And I'm hugely privileged and humbled that I sit on their board of the UK part of the, and do you know what, it's amazing. And the only reason I do it is I was moved by it, in a kind of commercial thing. And I think we're doing a very good thing with pirkx. Hopefully we can do something that's cool and good for people. And it feels really good to try and make money and do something good. But with the human rights stuff, I sat at a dinner and they said that human rights is actually, I'd always put human rights in that kind of category that was far away from me. There's been a disaster, and I donate some money to charity, but it always felt sort of quite removed from my very privileged lifestyle. And what they said is actually human rights, when you look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it's to everybody. If you're a male in London living an affluent lifestyle, you still have rights to justice and to privacy. And then I watched a speech by Bobby Kennedy, and it was his Ripple of Hope speech, where it basically says, if you do a little thing, it can create a big wave. And essentially for me, that moved me to the point where I wanted to participate, because I think there's little things that we can all do. But yeah, so on human rights, I also had always been scared of the word activist, because it sounded like something, ex-investment banker, it sounded like something quite scary. But actually taking action and doing stuff in whatever way we do it in life, I think is important. And so it's just taught me loads. And if I can help in any way, and it's not just that. It's really opened my eyes, because I'm by no means, I have nothing to say on human rights. If I can help, they give education to children and start to teach things into schools at an early age, and they've been phenomenally successful. So it's an amazing thing to be part. For me, it's a privilege, and I was just pleased to be asked.
A wonderful initiative. Let's come on a few questions that we ask every guest. Maybe it is baths, maybe it's Long Lost Family. Is there anything that you do on a regular basis to improve your mindset or help you feel better?
Yeah, so baths, and I roar. So I watched this other thing. It was a TED talk, and I make my whole team roar. And it's kind of a bravery thing, or I make them do a power pose in the morning, and there's some science behind that changes your chemical makeup and you react and behave differently. So I have fun with my team, and we roar or do power poses or silly stuff to inspire us for the day when we really need it.
So by roar you mean like a lion?
Yeah.
So I feel that must be quite empowering. Is that must be the
And new people to the team really hate it, and I probably shouldn't do it, but I make. But interestingly, and I won't name her, but one of the girls in my team, she joined and she didn't have a very good role. I mean, it was kind of pretty like, it was meek and mild, but she was also very shy, and she was very young. She's an apprentice, 18, and I made her roar publicly, you know, and look, that's not a nice experience. By the seventh roar, she was so fed up with me asking. She did, like, you know, the loudest roar of the whole team that day, and at the same time, I've got this kind of Karate Kid methodology of training, which is, you know, not the easiest and not the most palatable, perhaps. And you know, but for me, it's that wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. Probably Dad instilling in me when I was young, and yeah, I think you watch the difference in that individual from their first roar to their seventh roar, but it also had a knock-on effect to their behaviour, and little cheap tricks like that. Because it's cheap. I mean, it doesn't cost you nothing to stand in front of the mirror and put your hands in the air and roar, right? So it takes 2 seconds. But if that's going to change my chemistry and my makeup and make me do better in that next meeting, well, damn on me, I'm happy to roar in front of anyone or in the mirror, or, you know, and pull that pose before I walk into an important meeting.
Lovely. And you just talking about, you know, being better. What makes you good at what you do? I
care. Simply I care, and I don't like getting it wrong, but I do care, and I think you have to care, don't you? You care about getting your running right, I'm guessing, and I care about what I want to, you know. I think you need to care. It has to be purpose.
And what would you say to a young Stella?
I would say think bigger. I could have done more, you know. There's certain things you learn along the way where you get shortcuts into doing the stuff well, and, you know, it'd be nice if someone just told you that. If you just copy someone else, and, you know, you could have got more experiences in. So yeah, just think bigger. Try and make dreams happen, I suppose.
I think you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice there. You've done all right.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with where I'm at, but, you know, you can always do more, can't you? I think.
True. Any ideas, people, places, things, books that you have taken inspiration from recently?
Oh, my favourite. There's I think a theoretical neuroscientist. I can't remember her job description, but her name is Dr. Vivian Ming. She's amazing. She's like this AI guru, and her work, her thinkings are beyond. Yeah, I mean, I don't think even with it would be very hard to reach those. And for me, she writes a lot on technology and AI and how that will impact us and the things she builds. I mean, she had a child that was poorly and came up with stuff that I think it was diabetes that would stop her child hurting, and then didn't sell it for money because her theory, there's a TED talk on it if you Google it. Her theory was that if she had stopped to get it patented and go through that red tape, then another kid or person may have died before they got it, and that's not what she wanted. So, I mean, what an incredible human being. So for me, at the moment, Dr. Vivian Ming, if I was to share go and have a Google and have a look. But I like our Queen as well. So I know the royal family have got some stick, and it's perhaps contentious to say, but she gets up and does her job every day. And, you know, you don't hear of the Queen sitting in the bath having a cry very often, do you? But she's human. And so I think that sort of stoicism in turning up and doing what you've got to do because, you know, that's your duty, that for me is impressive. And
if anyone wants to get in touch, how do they do that?
Yeah, connect on LinkedIn, and my PA Lucy helps me with that. So you know, she'll go in and then connect you up if anyone wants to chat. We're always very happy, and if I can help in any way. And moreover, the Pirkx team are lovely. They are probably my most favourite humans. They're also the best people I've ever found in business, and there's a little collection of them. They're all together. So if any of us can help any business or person, you know, we're very happy to hear. At the moment, we still haven't added, you know, the no reply emails. I hate those. And because it's my business, we don't have those. So when you send an email to hello@Pirkx, there's a person at the other end of it, which I love. And I'm going to try and keep that no matter how big we get. That's what I want to keep, that personal kind of human element, because I think humans are quite special, really.
We can be. We certainly can be. Stella, I have enjoyed this hour or so much. Thank you. I love your energy, your positivity, your perspective on challenge. As we said, mental resilience isn't just about thinking that everything's okay. It's about reframing how we can make things okay. It's about getting up every day. It's about doing your job, caring. You're incredibly modest. You've sort of downplayed everything that you've achieved, but it really is remarkable. I love this concept of that sort of daily push and those healthy habits that we come to every day.
Try raw, James, for your next run. You're gonna have to try raw now.
To raw from the Cotswolds Way. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I will do so.
If it works.
I love that. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and everyone should get 87% because I didn't get bored of it and I have it on my phone. So everyone should have it, in my opinion.
And everyone should get perks. There's
Thank you.
Lovely sales job. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Cheers, James.
Wow, wasn't that fantastic? Stella has achieved an incredible amount in her life, yet she's so modest, and it was fascinating to get the insights of such a high achiever into going after things, but the need for prioritisation. This from someone who does so much, yet she admits that she doesn't have all the answers. The key takeout for me, do the things you enjoy and do the things that make you happy. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and share it. It'll help us spread the message that mental health is for everyone, and check back soon for the next episode of Life Happens.